mentioned you picked him to go through. Tom Izzo to the Sweet 16. I mean, this is somewhat like clockwork. I will say this: if you would have told me they were going to go 2 of 16 against Marquette from 3-point range, I would have told you I didn't think they were going to win the game. So how did they do it? How did Michigan State get through despite not playing particularly well, not playing well at all from behind the arc, which has really been their strength this year?
Yeah, well, we always talk about guards win in March. And I think the reason why guards win in March is because guards give you the best chance to score in the paint, whether that's them scoring for themselves or them creating for others. And so when I look at this Michigan State team, they could put the ball into the hands of two guys that can create off the bounce, that can finish at a high level. When you talk about Tyson Walker, he can get into the paint even though he's smaller, and he can finish over the trees. A.J. Hoggard has a strong physical body. So when you're playing against bigger, better athletes, maybe more athleticism that we see in other conferences, they're still able to finish over the top of them, being able to create. And I just love the decision making from the guards, right? I mean, 15 of the last 20 points in this game were from them, and they were able to kind of take over the game. And I thought a lot of it was set up with their ability to pass. Both those guys, they can get to the paint, mix things up. They can find shooters. They can find Sissoko down there in the paint. And so it's so hard to guard because when you get in as a defender, you kind of don't know what they're going to do. And so because they're able to mix it up, because they're able to be so crafty down there, I think that's why they're so successful. And that's why ultimately they won. And Sparty is starting to get it done on the defensive end.
Yes.
I think that's maybe one of the bigger things maybe as well. You talk about Kolek, the Big East Player of the Year, 7 points, 6 turnovers. They're pretty much able to shut him down. Even in the previous game, they were able to shut down Boogie Ellis. I felt like this Sparty team always had the potential defensively just because they had the athleticism, they had the size, they had the numbers. Now they're starting to show it.
Going into the NCAA tournament, we were talking about the fact that they had declined on the defensive end and that it was kind of a head scratcher, right? You looked over the last half dozen games, they'd given up more than 1.2 points per possession. That's just not a winning formula.
Right.
You can't win that way. But against a Marquette team that won the Big East and is a really good team, one of the hottest teams in the country heading into this tournament, it was right around 0.9 points per possession. What did you see that was different defensively? Was it simply about effort, or was there more to it? Because to your point, Kolek was completely frustrated in this game, and he wasn't alone.
They were able to take away the paint from Marquette. I mean, Marquette only had 16 paint points, and you talk about all the athletes they have, all the creators that they have, Cam Jones, Kolek, and some of those other Prosper, guys who are great athletes, great scorers at the rim. I think that was the biggest key, just because now it just makes Marquette a three-point shooting team. They took a ton of threes, kind of took them out of what they do. You talk about Marquette, they like to kind of get in there playing ball screen actions, be able to find guys, find some of their big men. And I thought just the physicality down there from all 5 guys, and then didn't be able to clean up the glass once the Marquette does miss. Then you can get out in transition and go. So I think it was being able to control the paint, even though Marquette made a ton of threes. I thought that was the difference.
It's interesting, too, because let's just be honest here. The 5 spot has not been an area of strength for Michigan State this year. We saw Mady Sissoko have a really nice beginning to the year. He was great in the game against Gonzaga on the aircraft carrier. I mean, I would say he was maybe the biggest story of that game from Michigan State's point of view. He's kind of come and gone offensively, more gone than come, frankly. Yeah. But, he ended up with 8 points in this game, but he was tremendous on the glass. He had 10 rebounds. And then I thought Carson Cooper came in and gave them good minutes. And again, to your point, they don't need their bigs to score a ton. But if they can be enforcers, if they can clean up the glass, if they can make a layup when the ball ends up down in their hands, that's a net positive given kind of all the other strengths that this team has, from those guards to Hauser.
And I think it also is defensive position, where you are on the floor in ball screen situations, being in the right spot, being at the point of the screen if you have a shooter. If you don't have a shooter, be in that drop coverage and be able to play too as the ball handler comes off. And so, I was watching this game, and I think the commentator was saying that they should go small. They should go small. Play Malik Hall and Joey Hauser, at the 4 and 5. And I love the fact that Izzo stuck to playing a traditional 5, just because, once again, it takes away the paint. And I thought those guys were in great position to contest a lot of Marquette's guards and made them a three-point oriented team. Because I think if Sparty would have went small, I think they would have been able to kind of get downhill, be able to finish. I think Malik Hall and Hauser had the potential in this type of game to get in foul trouble. So I love the fact that they stayed big, and I love that Cooper and Sissoko, those guys did a really good job controlling the paint.
What does it say about this team that perhaps their area of greatest strength was a huge weakness in this game? And I mean, if you look at previously this year, when they didn't hit threes, they lost. I mean, they had 8 games where they made 6 or fewer threes. They were 0-8.
Yep.
They come out in this game, they made 2, right? I mean, they're not even close to making 6 and still win the game. And you've kind of outlined why, right, that they were able to get into the paint. But like, what does it tell you more broadly about this team and kind of where they are mentally and where they are X and O wise to be able to pull that off?
Well, I think one of the reasons why they weren't able to knock down threes was because Marquette switches 1 through 5. So whenever you have a team that switches, it kind of makes you an ISO-oriented team because you're not able to get a team in rotation. You're not able to move the ball around. So what it tells me is just the fact that Sparty can win in a variety of different ways. So if you hard hedge on pick and rolls, you know, those guards are really good of being able to read that, be able to advance the ball, hit the short roll, be able to find shooters. But then if you switch, which usually challenges a lot of teams, they have guys that can create off the bounce and be able to kind of get into the paint and find guys or be able to create. So I think what it tells me is just like they can win, you know, playing isolation basketball where they have to kind of create, or they can win where teams are in that drop coverage where they have to hit the mid-range, or they can win with the hard hedge where you hit the short roll and be able to find shooters. So I think that's why this team is so scary, because they don't have to just hit threes to be successful in the offensive end.
10 wins now against top 2 teams in the seedings in the NCAA tournament over the last 25 years. That is the most of any program. And as we look at our big stat brought to you by Gatorade, there's just, look at the bracket, first. The Spartans will face Kansas State. Wildcats took down Kentucky yesterday to advance. They'll square off on Thursday in Madison Square Garden. The winner of that one gets the winner of FAU against Tennessee for a spot in the Final Four. So give me your thoughts here. First blush, Michigan State against Kansas State. K-State's been a great story this year. I mean, for Jerome Tang to take over like he did, they had a lot of guys leave. There was a ton of turnover. He basically had like 2 returning players and figured out a way to plug all of those holes. They've been an amazing story. They're the higher seeded team. What do we make of this matchup from Michigan State's point of view?
Well, when I look at, you know, from Michigan State's point of view, what I'm looking at from Kansas State, if I'm scouting, is this team plays really, really free. They want to ISO you. They want to spread you out. They want to attack you one-on-one. You look at Johnson and Noel, those guys average a combined 33 points per game. And so they're going to put the ball in those guys' hands. And so from Sparty's standpoint, it's just doing what you've done throughout the course of the NCAA tournament. You've been able to hold Boogie Ellis and Peterson for 5 of 22 shooting. You've been able to pretty much shut down Kolek. It's just carrying that over into the following weekend and being able to stop those guys. Because if you stop those guys, or at least make them high volume or make them uncomfortable, it forces other guys to play out of their game a little bit. Now the ball is in a complimentary guy's hands. And so I look at that. You can force a lot of tough shots, because one of the things about Kansas State, they get their shot blocked more than anybody in the Big 12. And they also turn the ball over more than anybody in the Big 12. So if you can force tough shots, force turnovers, you can get out in transition and be able to get some open looks on the offensive end.
They do an amazing job forcing turnovers themselves, and that'll be a huge point of emphasis for Michigan State. And we certainly all have, I think, etched into our memories games where Michigan State has been careless with the basketball and cut to exasperated Tom Izzo on the sidelines. But Kansas State has forced turnovers in 23% of its opponents' possessions here in these first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. So that is a huge part of how they win. I think very similarly to Michigan State, it tells you a lot that they won despite not shooting the ball well from behind the arc. I mean, to beat Kentucky, a traditional powerhouse as they are, and miss your first 13 threes, that tells you a lot about this K-State team.
Yeah, I mean, they got just guys with tremendous confidence, right? You talk about Noel, he kind of took over the game there against Kentucky. You have Keontae Johnson, who is, a very physical guard, can kind of score at 3 levels, can get you with the mid-range game. But I really like the matchup, though, because even though K-State, especially on the defensive end, they're stiff, they have a lot of athletes. I like the fact that Michigan State has multiple options. So if one guy, is not going, doesn't have it going, if Walker doesn't have it going, you could find another option. You can get Hauser coming off of screens. Or if Hauser doesn't have it going, you could throw the ball into Malik Hall and see what he has. So when things aren't going their way offensively, if they're not knocking down threes, if they don't have a rhythm offensively, they can be able to get it on the defensive end with their pressure, with this kind of newfound look defense that, the energy that they're providing. And then B, they're able to find multiple options on the offensive ends.
So 2 wins away from what would be the 9th Final Four under Tom Izzo. He's made it as a 7 seed. They did that in 2015. So we'll see whether or not Michigan State can win 2 more against a bracket that's opened up somewhat. I mean, Purdue was in it. They were the 1 seed. Duke was a really hot team.
Yep.
They have lost. Again, Tennessee looked really good against Duke. Kansas State has looked really good. It's not going to be easy by any stretch. FAU there as well. But we'll see for Michigan State. I was so anxious to get to this big stat brought to you by Gatorade. Izzo will look to continue something that has defined him through his career. That victory yesterday made it 16 wins as a lower seed in the NCAA tourney. Passes Jim Boeheim for the most all time. And how about this number? The Sweet 16 began with the 1975 tourney. Since then, in the Big Ten, only Indiana has more appearances as a team than Izzo has individually in the Sweet 16. He has been a machine this time of year. After 3 Big Ten teams got knocked out in their first game in the tourney, 4 others bounced out in the round of 32. You see the results from the weekend: Northwestern, Penn State, and Maryland all falling to higher seeded teams on Saturday. Wildcats and Nittany Lions both losing by just 5 points. Indiana fails to come through as a 4 seed. Hoosiers fell apart late in what ended up being a 16-point loss to Miami. And then you see Purdue on there as well. That game, obviously, since we were on the air on Friday. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. I think that deserves its own special treatment. But let's start with some of these round of 32 losses. Indiana outscored by 18 in the final 13 minutes of the game. They were dreadful on the glass. I mean, it was crazy against a team that isn't really noted for pounding the offensive glass. What did you make of Indiana and kind of a disappointing finish to what in some ways was a really good year? I mean, again, you beat Purdue twice. That certainly warms the hearts of Hoosiers fans. You get back to the round of 32 for the first time in a while, but a disappointing fizzle at the end.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Miami game, I thought that Miami did a really good job of speeding Indiana up. It just seemed like Indiana, especially in that first half, wasn't really able to get into their offense. And we've seen that before with Indiana, where teams have kind of pressured them. They jump trap everything. So then it becomes harder to get the ball into TJD. TJD only had 4 shot attempts in that first half. So they'd really had a tough time getting the ball into the paint. I think the way that they could have counteracted that a little bit is just attacking. When somebody's pressuring you that much, I think you got to just kind of just catch and go and be able to just kind of take your opponent off the bounce, make them play honest, so then they back off a little bit. Then you can kind of get into some of your offense. But I thought Indiana did a really good job in that second half of kind of getting to that short roll. And I think they've gotten to that when they've struggled offensively in the first half. I even go back to the Northwestern game when Northwestern kind of blitzed them in a similar fashion. They were able to kind of be able to hit TJD, get him going in the short roll, let him be a decision maker. But I thought what Miami did kind of in midway through the second half, which was really, really smart, was kind of just playing that drop coverage against JHS. And I thought, he had 22 field goal attempts. Jalen Hood-Schifino just wasn't as confident coming off of those ball screen actions. They were kind of going underneath and forcing him to kind of just keep the ball in their hands because they were really kind of getting out in rotation when Indiana was coming back into the game. But, I mean, you mentioned the glass. I mean, Miami's not a tall team. They don't have a lot of big bodies, but I just thought because of their athleticism and kind of with taking TJD away from the basket and kind of spreading them out on the offensive end, it kind of took TJD away from being able to rebound, and Race Thompson as well. And some of their guards were able to crash, and that's why they had 15 offensive rebounds in the second half.
Yeah, 20 for the game on 36 misses. I mean, that is just an astoundingly bad number, 56%. It just felt like Indiana was a step slow. There was one point where the announcers pointed out that Mike Woodson had yelled to his team, "Wake up."
Right.
And it just did feel like, for whatever reason, I don't want to say they sleepwalked through the game. I think that's overly harsh.
Yeah.
But they just weren't as engaged as it felt like you needed to be. It felt like Miami took the fight to them for whatever reason, and Indiana just didn't quite have it in them to respond, particularly in that late stretch where they just got pounded down the last, whatever it was, 10 minutes or so of the game. But again, made it to the round of 32, first time in 7 years. I know Indiana fans hope for more than the round of 32, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a step in a positive direction. But now, of course, you lose an All-American and Trace Jackson-Davis. You lose some complementary pieces. We'll see what happens. Northwestern, I thought Northwestern played really well, honestly, against UCLA. It just came down to what has been the story for this team a lot this year is they're not a great shooting team. And that they made it this far despite really not being able to shoot particularly well, dependably, speaks volumes about all the other things they do well. But UCLA is really good. I mean, I think they're going to be in the conversation to make it to the Final Four. And Northwestern gave them everything they could handle right there in a tie game going down the stretch.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. They did everything right but make shots. And I think it started with inside the paint, because they were driving in there, boo-booey, chase Audige, and it just seemed like every possession they got in there, they were either getting their shot blocked or it was just getting, altered. And I thought Matt Nicholson was able to kind of clean up the glass a little bit in terms of, finishing after those misses. But I really liked, in the second half when they came back, they attacked Jaime Jaquez. They got him in those isolation switches. They got the bigs away from the basket. But I thought, once again, UCLA, Mike Cronin made a really good adjustment, started blitzing those ball screens and forcing other guys to make perimeter shots. And Ty Berry, Robbie Barron, the ball ended up in their hand and just wasn't their day. And so I think at the end of the day, you have to tip your hat off to UCLA. Northwestern did everything right, I feel like, in this game. Just got to be able to make shots.
Barry and Barnhizer combined 2 of 17. Northwestern took 15 more shots in this game than UCLA did. I mean, it's amazing when you consider the degree to which they were dominated on the glass against Boise State. They really flipped the script against UCLA, particularly the offensive glass. The issue was they only had 8 second chance points. So you get 15 additional shots there, and yet you can't really figure out a way to convert on them. And again, that speaks to not being able to hit from the outside and having some really good looks. I mean, UCLA is an excellent defensive team. Northwestern found a way to get open shots. They just flat out couldn't make them.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, I thought, UCLA, whenever those Northwestern guards kind of got into the paint, they sold out. They sent, 2 or 3 bodies to try to contest Boo Booey's drives, Chase Audige's drives. And once again, it's just a matter of you being able to get those offensive rebounds and converting. And that's just what Northwestern wasn't able to do. And I thought just kind of the second effort from UCLA after they contested Boo Booey and Chase Audige's drives to be able to kind of get back into the play and force Northwestern to take another tough shot on the second shot as the ultimate, it's just that's a winning team. That's what a team that's going to get to Houston, looks like. But I think for Northwestern, 0 bench points. And when Northwestern's been really good, they've been able to get, contributions from Barnhizer, Martinelli, Verhoeven, some of those other guys, when the guards have struggled, they weren't able to really get anything. And I thought it was ultimately the size and athleticism of UCLA was the reason for that.
All right, UCLA, again, really good team. And they didn't fall into some of the traps that Northwestern's opponents fall into. They only had 8 turnovers, took care of the ball. So, again, really good. I mean, if you would have told Northwestern they were going to make the round of 32 at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of people would have been incredulous. So, really good season out of them. Maryland had a really good year, too. This was a really impressive turnaround in year 1 under Kevin Willard. I think you have to give him a lot of credit for that. That being said, just kind of faded, really, offensively the whole game. They just couldn't figure anything out. And then defensively just kind of fell apart in the second half against Alabama, who's really good, might be the most talented team in the country, might win the national championship. Again, there's no shame in this, but down the stretch, by the end, this was not a competitive game.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama is just so deep. They have 2 of everything. So when one guy is struggling, when Sears goes 1 of 5 from the field, you can put Quinterly in there and he'll give you 22 points. Or Brandon Miller is struggling, they have another guy coming off their bench who doesn't, play a ton that is, like a starter in a big in a Power 5 conference. And so I just look at the depth and how many bodies that Alabama was able to throw at Maryland. I thought that was the difference, because Maryland, if Jameer Young is struggling or if Hakeem Hart is struggling, they don't have the depth to kind of counteract that and kind of make up for that. So I thought ultimately that was the difference. I thought the athleticism, once again, of Alabama really affected Jameer Young, who shot 5 of 13. And I really felt like Young, as great of a year that he had this season, it just seemed like the last 3 games he really started to wear down. I don't even think it was, a confidence thing or, him being off rhythm. It just seemed like just how much responsibility that he had on the offensive end. He was top 3 in the Big Ten in usage rate. That takes a toll on you when you get into those late games that are so important when teams are really keen in on you. So I thought that was a difference towards the end as well.
And it did not help that Julian Reese, who has become such an important piece for them here down the stretch, I'd say the second half of the season, really just been fabulous. He got in foul trouble. Kevin Willard was unhappy with some of the calls and made it clear afterward. But I think that speaks to what you're saying, is there's just not a whole lot behind that. And that's to be expected in year one when you inherit a program. I think he did an amazing job of, A, improving the guys who stuck around, and B, convincing guys to stick around. Because in this day and age, when there's a coaching change, there's nothing really keeping you there. Right? I mean, so the fact that Hakeem Hart came back, that Dante Scott came back, and Julian Reese, for that matter, I think speaks to the culture that Kevin Willard's building and the kind of positive vibe that surrounds this program. Again, I would say hugely successful year. Didn't play great, unfortunately, on Saturday against a really, really good team. And then I can't say enough positive about Penn State. And they had a chance. I mean, this game falls much more under the category of the Northwestern UCLA game than it does the Maryland-Alabama game. I mean, Penn State was right there. They're leading the game in the final 5 minutes, but just kind of went cold, and Texas literally didn't miss down the stretch. But what an amazing year for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the beginning of the year, they went through some lulls. They had high expectations, and I think there was a certain point of the year, even when we got into Big Ten play, where we kind of said, you know what we're seeing from Northwestern is what we expected out of Penn State. So this team really went through some adversity. They kind of couldn't figure out that 5 position. And so you got to tip your hats off to Michael Shrewsbury and company, just because the way that they battled, the veteran leadership. You talk about the end of the regular season, to come back from 12 points to essentially, clinch your ticket into the NCAA tournament. It just was an incredible season for Penn State. I thought just ultimately, once again, I thought the length and the athleticism of Texas kind of bothered Penn State. I mean, Timmy Allen is a guy that's your 4-man that's you're able to put on Pickett. Pickett had 6 turnovers in the game, and I thought Texas did a really good job of fighting through screens. They were one of the only teams that I've seen that didn't switch all the movements that Penn State ran, but were still able to kind of get over the top and have a contest on all those looks that Penn State had. Andrew Funk shot 2 of 10 from 3. So ultimately, I thought that was the difference.
Yeah, Andrew Funk was so great in that opener, and then, as you said, just couldn't find his stroke in this one. And if the game comes down to a battle in the paint, they're not going to win that. I mean, Jalen Pickett obviously is, we saw him get 41 against Illinois. I suppose a lot of those points were in the paint. But Texas just had the ability to get easy hoops inside that Penn State couldn't. Outscored them by 16 in the paint. And again, if you shut down Penn State from 3, you got a really good chance to win the game.
And I think also, too, like when I look at Texas, normally they don't get a ton of scoring from their interior players. Dessou, who's an extremely talented, athletic big man, had 28 points. And so whenever Penn State has gone up against a guy that's able to kind of score in that painted area, even going into Big Ten play. You talk about some of the struggles they had against Purdue, even a team like Michigan, Indiana as well. I just always felt like it's always kind of in the other team's favor when they've had a guy that kind of is able to score down there. And that's why I like the matchup, just because normally Texas is a guard-oriented team. Marcus Carr is a great player, Hunter as well. But they were able to kind of hit Dessou in that short roll area, and he was kind of able to operate and shoot over the top of the smaller Penn State team.
Longhorns hit their final 6 shots from the field. Again, we were counting down the last 5 minutes of this game. Penn State's in the lead. So every chance in the world, you're right there at the end. And you just think about how unusually this team was built. They end up setting a Big Ten record for the most made threes in a season. Really just some perspective on a phenomenal year, Trey.
Yeah, I mean, just a phenomenal. I mean, and I just love the fact that it was a senior-led team, and they were kind of able to, almost be the coaches on the floor. Obviously, Shrewsbury did a great job, but when you talk about, some of the adversity that was hit, some of the things that they struggled with, having to sometimes play with, Dredd at the 5 at times, throughout the course of the year, this team stood together. They played tough. They made the winning plays down the stretch. And you can't give enough credit to the fact that now Penn State, looking at some of the recruiting class that they have coming in, being able to potentially play for Micah Shrewsbury, this is a very, very, very good spot that I think that if I'm a recruit that I'm looking at hard to potentially play at.
And if you're a transfer as well, I mean, he did an incredible job with the portal. Jalen Pickett's been there for a couple of years, but Funk was a brilliant pickup.
Oh, unbelievable.
And paid incredible dividends for them. So this notion of understanding the pieces you need, being able to fit them in, and then being able to go out and sell players who are in that portal, because they are going to be very young next year. We've talked about it throughout the course of this year. They're literally the most experienced team in the country. When you have the most experienced team one year, you're not going to the next year, and so they're going to need some veteran pieces to come in. And again, you've got a great sell with everything that they did this year. So kudos to Penn State on a fantastic season. And on the mat, Penn State brought home the national title for the 10th time since 2011. Had 2 individual national champions, Carter Starachi and Aaron Brooks. Iowa finished 2nd, Ohio State 4th, Michigan 6th, Nebraska 8th. And all that, we take a deep breath. Shane Sparks is here. Again, 10 titles in 12 seasons. It was dominant in terms of the point differential. Put this into perspective. Like, how good was Penn State this weekend?
I'm not sure, Dave, if there's a college athletic program that has this kind of dominance. So they beat Iowa by 55 points. That's a Penn State record, 5th in NCAA history, 5 in the finals. They get to 2 champs. It's just incredible. I mean, Roman Bravo Young denied his 3rd title, but the guy's going for 3. Carter Starachi and Aaron Brooks, as you mentioned, but there's always those young guys. Bo Bartlett at 141 took 3rd place. Shane Van Ness at 149 winning as a 12 seed. Battled back in a couple matches. He finds a way. They just find a way to win it. In the NCAA finals under Cale Sanderson, 680 winning percentage. They win when it matters most. They keep it loose. They have a lot of fun. That's just kind of their culture there. And when the lights shine bright, man, do they step up. It's incredible.
I mean, that's where it's so staggering, right? You're talking about against the best of the best in the country. And as you said, the margin, the largest they have ever had in winning these NCAA titles. So this, by that measure, their most dominant team. Let's talk about their national champions. Let's start with Starachi winning his 3rd straight. Give us a sense of his weekend.
He's just got so much confidence, and I think he's one of the toughest guys. I don't think anybody would argue that. He loves to be uncomfortable. He's won 52 straight. That kind of consistency in the Big Ten is remarkable. His last loss was back in 2021, Big Ten Finals against Michael Kemmerer. He avenged that loss a couple weeks later to win his first NCAA title. He's only got a couple losses. He's avenged them both. If you ask Carter Starachi, he'll tell you, since I avenged him, in my mind, I'm undefeated. But he brings a lot of swagger to the mat. He's kind of a fun guy to watch.
24-0 on the year for him. And again, it speaks to how amazing he is, because you touched on it. He's won 3 NCAA titles. He's only won 2 Big Ten titles.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it just shows you how good the Big Ten is.
Exactly.
I
Yes.
suppose. But remarkable. I mean, to win 3 straight national championships, to win 1. I mean, it's just an incredible, incredible achievement. And it just shows you how good he is. So he won at 174. And then immediately after that, Aaron Brooks wins at 184. He was a 3 seed, but I know we talked about it, and watching you and Rick talk about this too. He was the de facto favorite, right?
Yeah, no
this
question.
isn't really an upset, is it?
Yeah, it's really not. You could make a case he's the best all-around wrestler in college wrestling, Aaron Brooks. This guy's just amazing. He's so good on his feet. He's really punishing the top position, just so fluid, makes it look easy. I mean, it's almost laughable how good he is, because it's not that easy. We know that, but just controlled the entire tournament once again. Beat some really good guys. Beat Caleb Romero of Ohio State, who ended up taking 3rd. Beat Trent Hidley for the 3rd consecutive NCAA championship. That was in the semifinals, and then got it done against Parker Ketkaisen of Northern Iowa. Really tough kid who was 3rd at previous 2 championships. So Aaron Brooks just doing what Aaron Brooks does.
three-time Big Ten champ, 67-3 in his career. And then I've got to say, I was warmed by this next one, the national championship for Mason Paris, because the battle with Gable Steveson that you guys outlined through the last couple of years, where Steveson always seemed to kind of come out on top, and Mason Paris was right there. For Mason Paris to get a national championship, how meaningful is that?
Oh, it's huge. 24th in Michigan history. Had to be Greg Kirkfleet. These guys going into this championship final, 3-3 in their careers, had a really good match in the Big Ten final. That was a sudden victory win for Mason Paris, but you said it before. He'd been dealing with Gable Steveson, 3-time Big Ten finalist, finally punched through on that third time in Ann Arbor. That was really cool for him. And then beating Kirkfleet again, finishes his season 33-0. That's really big for the Maize and Blue. And that was big for Michigan. They lost a lot last year. So for them to finish 6th place, great job by Sean Bourmet and his staff. And they're led by their big guy at heavyweight.
Right, the first heavyweight national champion for Michigan in 37 years. That's a great story. So Big Ten had 5 of the top 8 teams. 7 wrestlers lost in the final. So in addition to the 3 national champs, you got 7 more who were right there and finished in 2nd place. I don't think there's ever been a doubt. I mean, it's not like this is some sort of great revelation that the Big Ten is the best wrestling conference in the country. Did we learn anything new through this performance, though, this weekend to see 5 of the top 8 teams coming from the Big Ten?
I'm not sure if it was anything that I learned, but it was reinforced how good these guys are, Dave. I mean, the 33rd seed at the Division I national tournament is an extremely talented wrestler. You're in the top probably 1%, top 0.5%. Pretty amazing. And you're dangerous. You're capable. And another thing that was reinforced, the mind. The mind. I mean, this is the most powerful muscle these guys have. It's how you navigate those 3 days to get on the podium or stand atop the podium as a national champion. So that's what was really reinforced to me, how good these guys are, the depth of college wrestling. But I would tell you this, Dave, make no mistake about it. Big Ten, over 30 All-Americans, 5 of the top 8 in the team standings, 16 consecutive tournaments where a Big Ten team has won it all. Make no mistake about it, Dave, the nation's premier wrestling conference is the Big Ten. Don't forget it.
16 straight team national championships. That's just a staggering number. Now, of course, it helps to have one team have won 10 of them in that time. But again, you talk about 5 of the top 8. If it wouldn't have been them, it would have been someone else in the Big Ten. I have to ask you about Spencer Lee. And I think in some ways it's unfortunate that probably the clip that the most people saw coming out this week, the most people who aren't serious wrestling fans, right? Like serious wrestling fans are talking about all the things you're talking about. I think unfortunately the rest of the world, what they saw was Spencer Lee losing to Matt Ramos, who's a Purdue guy.
Yes.
Right? And I mean, amazing story in and of himself. And then the cutaway of Spencer Lee's mom crushing her glasses.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So
yep.
it's too bad, but he's an amazing story. Ramos a great story too. Give us a kind of a broader perspective on everything that went down there.
It was a stunner. I mean, I just got done saying these guys are all capable, and I stand by that, but no question, it was a stunner because he's just been so dominant, trying to become the 4th or the 5th guy ever to win 4 individual national titles. But Matt Ramos, you got to remember, in that dual meet, he had a beautiful lateral drop, put Spencer Lee on his back, was up 8-1. Ultimately, Spencer Lee in that dual meet got the fall. But Matt Ramos in that match did some really good things. He kept himself in the match. That second period, he was tilted for 4, but he didn't get turned again with about a minute left in the period. Then in that third period, he was down 7-4. Spencer Lee had riding time off a restart with 50 seconds. Dave, at that point, I would bet Spencer Lee's, based on the analytics, probably about a 99% chance of winning it.
Yeah.
But time on the clock, time to score. Matt Ramos got a critical quick escape. I think that's one of the biggest moves in the last 20 years of college wrestling, believe it or not. And then he puts him on his back, gets the fall with 1 second left. Spencer Lee, an amazing career. 3-time national champion. He won 58 straight. He's one of the all-time greats in the sport. But one thing with this sport, Dave, is everybody that touches the Resolite in some way, shape, or form is humbled. Different capacities. Cale Sanderson's been humbled in this sport. It humbles us all. It's not always a kind sport. It can be mean, but that's what makes wrestling so unique. That's why we love it. Matt Ramos, that day, was a little bit better. And it really, for me, just puts into perspective how tough it is, Dave, to win matches. To win a match at this level is extremely difficult. It's tough to win a match. So when you look at what Spencer Lee's done during the course of his career, it just, again, reminds me of, man, what a spectacular career, one of the more dominating wrestlers I've ever seen. But big upset, I would go back to perhaps 1970. Dan Gable in his final match against Larry Owings. Larry Owings beat him 13-11. Legendary coach, of course, from the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
Only loss in his college career. It happens to everybody.
Well, it happened to Spencer Lee
Yes.
when I think, against all odds, I think most of us thought it wasn't going to happen to Spencer Lee, but it did. Lots more where this came from. Big Ten Wrestling and Beyond, 7 Eastern tonight, as Shane and Rick Pizzo go through everything that happened. Again, a banner weekend for the Big Ten. Thanks as always, Shane.
Always
Really
appreciate it, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
Coming. A lot of positives for Purdue basketball this season. They won the Big Ten outright by 3 games. They won the conference tourney. They earned a 1 seed in the NCAA tourney. They will absolutely be remembered for all of those things. But they will also be remembered for a shocking loss on Friday night, falling to Fairleigh Dickinson, just the second 1 seed ever to lose to a 16. Trey Demps rejoins me. I'm just going to put it to you simply, what the heck happened?
Well, I mean, obviously, coming into this game, we knew that FDU was the smallest team in the country. And to their credit, they utilized that. They pressed the entire game. Like a lot of teams, when they press Purdue, they'll press Purdue for, a half or a 10-minute stretch. They were able to press the entire game. Braden Smith had 7 turnovers. So once again, Purdue had a hard time kind of getting into their offense, creating a flow and rhythm. And I thought what FDU did on the offensive end was really smart as well. I thought they did a good job of spreading, Purdue out, taking Zach Edey away from the paint, a lot of ISOs. But what I liked in their ISO movement, FDU did a good job of cutting and be able to kind of find the seams and the holes, within those mid-range areas, kind of get some mid-range shots. They're able to get some offensive rebounds as well, had 11-second chance points. So I think you got to give FDU a ton of credit. And I think on Purdue's side, once again, it's just 3-point shooting, right? I mean, 5 of 26 from 3. It's just hard to overcome that with how wide open those shots were. A lot of those, FDU's strategy was simple. We're going to pack the paint. We're going to play physical and scrappy and try our best to not allow Zach Edey to get in there and, be able to have his way. And so Zach Edey did a good job of getting the ball out. And a lot of those shots were uncontested, nobody within 4 or 5 feet, and they just weren't able to knock them down.
That's what's so crazy. These were pregame warm-up threes.
Yeah.
A lot of them. I mean, you literally had that much time. And it almost felt like it was too much time. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there were a couple where, and give Fletcher Lawyer some credit. He's been a horrible slump. He actually, hit a couple.
Sure.
But there were a few times, Gillis and Lawyer, you just thought they were thinking about it before they shot it. And you've been in that spot. I've never
Sure.
been in that spot. But my sense is that's not a great recipe for success. But then again, 16 turnovers killed them. I think what really astounded me, honestly, was I don't even think, like, on the defensive end, Fairleigh Dickinson had a great game plan.
Yep.
And they surrounded Edey and, just made it miserable for him.
Yep.
And then forced him to kick it out, as he said, and left those guys open. But, like, offensively, they shot under 40% and still won the game.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of think, well, this is a team that's going to have to play out of its mind. It really doesn't even feel like they played out of their mind, and yet somehow still won the game.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a great offensive game, to be honest. And it's hard to wrap your mind around. And it's a tough thing, but I think what I'm looking for with Purdue is you got to go back and see what's happened in history. The last 16 seed, to beat a number 1 seed. What happened the next year? They won the national championship. And so you learn from it, you grow from it, you have this fire in your belly going into the offseason as you train. It's always going to be in the back of your mind. And, I think a big thing, too, is the development of Trey Kaufman, Wren, and Caleb Furst. How much those guys, if you kind of would have inserted them at certain moments, confidence-wise, the athleticism, the versatility that they bring on both ends of the floor, I think going forward, those guys are going to get a lot more playing time and be able to kind of play together. Not that Zach Edey won't play, but I think maybe you'll see Edey's minutes drop a little bit and get those guys in the lineup more to kind of be able to switch things up on both ends of the floor.
Guard play will have to be better next year. It doesn't mean it has to be different guards. I think those guys are both, those freshmen are really good, and they're going to be really good. It's hard. We talked all year that it is difficult as a freshman to step in and have that burden of being the starters on a team that's expected to win the national championship. That being said, this is an astounding loss.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at FDU, they lost to Hartford, who's transitioning down to Division III. They lost to Sacred Heart twice. They lost to Central Connecticut. They lost to something called Stonehill. I don't even think you could tell me where Stonehill is, right? I mean, it's an astounding loss and will go down as such. That's not to say they can't win the national championship next year. It's not to say they didn't have a really good year. Both things can be true.
Yep.
But it is really, really tough to swallow, no doubt.